I enjoy this. I enjoy every bit of this because like I like to take charge. I like to make difference. Uh, you know, be it just setting up the office or uh, you know changing the way current processes are working in operations, the way it is perceived by the client. I like to make things better, and I enjoy this every bit of that. It's it's different, and at the same time, I feel that in this culture, people appreciate those people who want to change the status. It's
Hey there, my name's Ollie Pulaski, and welcome to another episode of the Founders Unmasked. The Founders Unmasked is a show where Tom Moore interviews different founders and unmasks the reasons as to why they became a founder, why they stay a founder, and what they've figured out in the big bet that they're taking. Today, Tom interviews AT. AT is the co-founder of iSchoolConnect, a company helping connect students to overseas learning opportunities using AI. I learned 3 things from Tom's interview with AT about being an entrepreneur. Firstly is the value of persistence. AT credits this value of persistence with being one of his key skills as a founder. The second thing I learned was the power of investigation and data. For much of AT's career before he moved into artificial intelligence, he worked as a data scientist and studied in it as well. From this, he learned really the power of being a good investigator and using data to help your investigation out. The last thing, and I think the most important thing I learned from this interview with AT, was about never yielding to the status quo. One of the main traits I think a lot of founders have. AT comes from a very high context culture. And in that, when you go against the status quo, a lot of people try and throw you out. This ended up benefiting AT in the long run as it taught him many important skills such as creating win-win scenarios. And it also helped strengthen and lengthen his time span. This was a really great interview to watch, and thanks AT for being on the show. So without further ado, please join me in watching AT get unmasked.
Tell us why you enjoy being an entrepreneur.
okay. I'll start right. I think the roots go long back to where I was raised and
Sure.
how I was raised. Okay. So I'll start with my family. Okay, the values that I got in those years. Okay, especially my father and mother. Okay, so my father, he used to work throughout the day, and then I used to go to night college. Okay. The same time, when I was growing up, he imbibed certain values in me. I once wanted a bicycle. Okay. And
What type of bicycle? Do you remember?
yes, it was BMX, the yellow colored one, which was there in television. I was excited about it. Okay, so I was looking forward to that, and then he mentioned that okay, I will get you that, but first in this year you need to top your school. Okay, you top your division, and okay, I said fine. Uh, I studied very hard. I topped the class, and I went back saying that you get me this bicycle, and he did not. He got me some other instrument instead. He gave me a carom board, which was another game. And then he said, let's see, you managed to do it this time, you do it one more time. And I studied again, and I got to the top again. And next year also he did not give me that. So 4 years in a row this happened, and 4 years I topped straight. And then when actually I switched my house, I was living in a very small house. he gave me the bicycle, but at the same time, he taught me that you have to earn things. You can't just demand and get it, right? So that's one value. Second value is from my mother.
Do you mind if I just hold you there for a second before you jump
Yes.
into your mother? Why do you think he kept pushing it a year to the right? Why don't you think he gave you that bicycle the first time he did?
What I think about it is he wanted me to uh, give my best things to achieve what I want. He wanted to train me in real life scenarios. If you want to achieve something, you have to put in efforts to get that. You have to earn it, and that's the lesson I carry forward from that day.
But why do you think you got it at year 4 and not year 2?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Probably I have to think about that, but I think it's more about patience. Learning to have patience, and that's probably the second value. Now that you have asked me, it's pushing me towards thinking that patience is another virtue. You don't get things, immediately that you think you'll get. You have to wait sometimes. You have to strive harder till you get it.
Right. So it sounds like the value was shooting for a big goal, and then patience, or maybe discipline and then patience.
Discipline, yes.
Now, do you think the way you learned patience also made you understand distrust? Because if someone kept telling me I was going to get something if I worked hard and then they moved the goalpost, I'd eventually not trust them. Or is that the way to learn patience, is actually distrust? What do you think?
Distrust. That's an interesting point or viewpoint. But I would never distrust my father. I mean, at that age, he was my role model. So it was not distrust. I knew he would get it, would give me that. It's just I also felt that I just had to try hard, right? So I don't think so. That was a feeling at that time.
Who are you trying harder against? You came first.
Yeah,
You
but
won.
every time in the next year, everybody else is going to try that, right? So I had to
Right.
keep on trying. Yeah.
At the time, did it feel like distrust, or did it motivate you to go harder? Like at the time, not now, looking back, where you've obviously learned patience from it.
It did to a fraction. It did demotivate me, but at the same time, he kept on giving me something else. So it kept on. Yeah. So it kept on motivating me because I knew that okay, he's not giving me this, but he's giving something else, and I like that equally.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably that was the reason. I kept going after it.
And when you rode the bike for the first time at year 4, was it worth it?
Oh, totally. I
Let's
still
talk about
remember.
let's talk about that.
So we shifted from a very small house where there's nothing much, but then in a larger house where I can keep my bicycle and go out. And when I first rode it without his support, like he used to teach me initially, but when I first rode it without his support, I felt like I achieved something. I can do things on my own. So yeah, that was a different feeling.
Right. Okay. How long did you ride that bike for before it was retired?
I think I rode it for 4 years,
Mm.
and then I got a big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you mentioned your mother. Tell
Oh,
me
I
more.
mentioned my mother, and that is very important aspect in my life. So I have a sibling. I have a younger sister who is a special child. Okay, she is a mentally challenged person, and it was detected very early in her life. And there were multiple things happened during that. She got a disease called Grover, and it was at very kind of a last stage, and none of the hospitals were ready to take her in, get her bed. Okay, and my mother was fighter. She was not ready to listen to any of the doctors. So when the beds were not available, she bought a table and put it in one of the wards, and told the doctor, "Here's a place, and you need to start treating her right now." Okay. And she was towards a kind of last stage, and from that point onwards, she recovered. My sister. That taught me one thing: never, ever, yield to status quo. Like, you can change things. Okay, and that was very important learning. Not only that, once she recovered, uh, she my mother used to take her to school and to all other avenues through which she can grow. And ultimately, at the age of 14, my sister's age of 14, she ended up winning a gold medal and 2 bronze medals in Special Olympics held in Ireland in 2001. So yeah, I think that was one of the important lessons to me, that taught me that, okay, you can change the status quo, you can fight against odds and get things done.
Right. So how did the shooting for a bold reward, patience, and challenging the status quo lead you to being a founder? How did you get to become that entrepreneur from there?
Yeah. So one thing and one important aspect here is, I realized when I was doing a job in early stages, I was doing a very repetitive task without knowing why am I doing it.
Mm.
Okay. In one of my previous companies, and
What were you
I was
doing?
not. I was a DevOps person doing
Right.
integrations across multiple products and taking it to the next stage. But I was doing it repeatedly again and again, and it was not enough for me. I needed to know why I'm doing certain thing, what impact I'm creating on the society. Okay, and that's probably from my again from family. My grandfather was a principal in a school. He had a huge impact on the society at that time. My uncle had started a couple of schools himself in the village he lived, and I wanted to do something which will create impact to the society. And when I heard about this opportunity, and it links back to again the status quo aspect. Majorly, a lot of students in India couldn't think about studying abroad dream because they thought that it is not affordable. Okay. And I saw this opportunity, and I immediately jumped into it to create a platform which will help students to achieve their dreams. Okay. Uh, the first foundation of that is through the admissions platform, where we get a huge amount of data and help for the students, and then through automation and AI, where we are able to fast track that process, make it completely bias free, and students get enough knowledge and opportunity to achieve their dreams. And yeah, that's the status quo I wanted to change. That's the status quo I still want to change. But that dream is right now not just limited to that aspect. I still want to go beyond uh, the admissions platform and help students get to their dream jobs, because ultimately that's what uh, students strive for.
What? How many? Just to pull you right back to the start of that story, which I think is important before we get into what you're working on right now. How many days did you do the repetitive task before you were just like, oh, I've had enough of this bullshit? How?
It was not days. It was years. I did
Really?
that.
Thousands of
Yeah,
days.
thousands of days, I would say. Yes.
Why do you think it took that long? Why do you think it took that long?
Uh, that's a challenging question here again. So I started doing it uh, for the product, and then I realized that this is very cumbersome and a repetitive process. I started automating there. So maybe for 6 months, I got trained, I got more ownership, I got promoted to leader and all. But I realized that I'm doing this over and over again. So I completely automated the whole process. And then when I was leaving out of the job, I had just one click of a button and everything used to be done automatically. So probably I kept myself busy in automating the whole process for the next person who's going to replace me. And I think that kept me engaged in that job. And then I moved to do my MBA. I prepared for my MBA. Interestingly, in a bus, I used to travel to that place for 5 hours in a bus to and fro. And then I used to work for 12 hours. And in the bus, I used to study for GMAT and CAT and all those exams. And I cracked that and I got into MBA, where I took strategic management and statistics as my majors. So I moved towards that. Yeah, and then I was contemplating what to go do with my future then at that time.
So you effectively stay in that job so you can work out so no one else has to do this job again. Fine.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then you then go to an MBA. What's going on? Like, if I was to say, aren't you in the business of challenging the status quo? Why are you doing a job that's repeating processes and a job that go do a master's of bullshit administration is what I call them. I don't think they teach people really anything. I think they help meet people is what the best thing they do. Well, as the young kid that won the BMX by the one that learned to challenge the status quo of his mother,
Yes.
why have you done these two things? Do you think? What drove the idea to go into an MBA?
The main thing behind that was to start my own business, challenge to the status quo. And at that time, my notion was, if you do MBA, you learn some business tricks, then you can do business. I did not have
Did you
a
learn any
mentor that
tricks?
I barely, honestly,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I had met a lot of peers through which I learned a lot of things. So and secondly, I learned about data. Okay, I learned about AI at that time. So I had done internship during that time in one of the paint companies, and the job or the task assigned to me in that internship was to find out uh, a drop in turpentine level during transport. Okay, uh, and I was given 10 days to find it out. Just go and figure out what is happening. So I studied the chemical properties of that turpentine. I was not chemical engineer. I was completely from IT background throughout my life. Okay, but I studied the chemical aspects of that. I actually, and then realized it's not melting point, it's nothing else. Then I actually followed a truck to see if there is theft happening or not. Okay, and it was not that. I tried multiple. I tried at the source. I observed people at source. I spoke to them. I observed people at destination. I spoke to them and asked a lot of questions. Nothing was working. Then I took the data from them and started studying, and I found a pattern. And then that pattern revealed one thing: okay, that there was constant ratio. And then that pushed me to think that okay, there must be something wrong with the weighing scale. And then I went checked the weighing scale at the destination end, and there was something wrong with that, and I uncovered that with respect with the help of data. And then I realized okay, data is something which is very powerful, and if you make use of data properly, uh, you can change things. So that was a main learning that came out of that MBA.
So, so you worked out how to automate and start to build artificial intelligence, and then you go towards your MBA. And I think what you're saying is the MBA taught you the power of investigation.
and data through data.
Right.
When was this? When was the MBA?
It was between 2011 and 2013.
Okay, so it's over 10 years ago now.
Over 10 years ago.
Mm.
And then I decided to move into data science. At that time, it was called data science. Then it turned into machine learning, artificial intelligence. The terminologies kept on changing, but the foundation was always data. And I wanted to get into that specific domain. And when I came back to my hometown, Mumbai, there were not many companies which had data science. And I found one company which had data science, but that company was also new, and there was nothing, there was no job application, nothing, and I wanted to get in. Okay, so I just dropped an email with resume and cover letter to multiple email addresses with HR at the rate, say that company name, support, and a lot of careers and everything. And one email actually hit, and it hit the CEO's email box, and he called me up. He told me there is no opportunity right now, but because you're so passionate, he gave me an interview opportunity, and then I interviewed with him, and I got the entry into data science, which is right now AI. So that was a startup, and I was happy to get into startup because I wanted to create my own startup at some point. Okay, so I worked with that startup for about 6-7 years, and through them I got the opportunity to create our own entity. We got seed funded by them.
So let's slow right down and go back to the MBA. When was the first time you think you challenged the status quo? I'd like to go there. From now back towards the MBA, or when did that young BMX riding AT challenge the status quo?
I think I challenged status quo post MBA. Once I understood the power of data, right? I started challenging status quo post that phase when I jumped into that startup, where I realized through data you can create a lot of difference. So, for example, I worked on one of the challenges for a big fast food company in US, where they were struggling to understand the next demand for their products across 2,000 stores, across 3,000 odd products that they had, right? And I created a model which was predicting what is going to be demand in next 15 minutes for all those products, for all those stores. So you can imagine the scale at which that model was working, and then I was able to take it up at the monthly level and weekly level and yearly level. So that predictive model that I had created, that changed the game completely for that company, especially for drive-through traffic, where you need to be very fast. You need to know what is going to be the next demand on that day, on that hour. And I think that was the first challenge to status quo, and that was a confidence boost for me that I can make difference.
Do you think you needed the edge of understanding the skill of data science in order to do it? Or do you think someone needs an edge to challenge the status quo?
No, I mean, that is just a tool. Okay. Is the drive that is very important,
But you didn't do it until you had the tool. Did you need that sword? Do you think people need a sword like that before they actually really challenge something?
I would say people need drive first. Okay, that they have to make change, and the sword can be figured out. I have an interesting story for that, if I may talk about that. So do you know Akbar and Birbal? These are very prominent people in Indian history, and Akbar probably, Dan, you know that. Akbar was a king, and Birbal was one of the smartest person he had. And Akbar once asked, which is the best tool to fight, okay, uh, to all crowd that he had, okay, and nobody was able to answer. Now everybody came up with, okay, you require sword or you require some other weapon and all those things. But Birbal replied at that time, whatever tools comes to your hand when in need, that is going to be important tool. Akbar was confused, like why do you think that is the answer? He told, wait, I will show you. And then few days passed. There was a rogue elephant who was going around in the city, and he was charging at one person, okay, and I think that person was about to die, and suddenly he saw a cat around, and he picked up the cat and threw it at the elephant, and because of that sound that cat makes, elephant just got distracted and ran away, right? So that proved that you have any tool that is in need, that is available in need, you should take it and use it. So I would say that data science was a tool to achieve that goal at that time, but you don't require a specific tool to achieve the status or break the status quo. It's the drive that is very important.
That's interesting. Do you mind? What is it like being in a high context culture like India, where they actually don't like to upset people?
Sorry, I couldn't catch the first part of this.
I was just saying, what is it like living in a high context culture like India, where they actually don't like to upset people to save face, and being the guy that likes to challenge the status quo, which is the one thing they don't like to shake up. I know I'm generalizing, but it's a little bit true.
Yeah, I understand that and why you're saying that, because of the way the country is, so people are like that and they take things as is. Some of the people who have been working with me, who have been doing repetitive work, still are doing a lot of repetitive work. Now the question is, what is it that takes to come out of that and break the status quo, right? Is that a question?
I want to know what it's like to be one of the few people that want to challenge what people are saying in that type of culture. What's it like to be you every day?
Honestly, I feel I enjoy this. I enjoy every bit of this, because like I like to take charge. I like to make difference. You know, be it just setting up the office, or changing the way current processes are working in operations, the way it is perceived by the client. I like to make things better, and I enjoy this every bit of that. It's different, and at the same time I feel that in this culture people appreciate those people who want to change the status. It's yeah, I think that is
But has
another
there been
aspect.
have you got an example of when it hasn't worked for you?
Yes, it hasn't worked for me multiple times, especially when you have colleagues who do not want to have that challenge to status quo. Okay, they want to keep things as is, and move slowly, or don't move too fast, don't try to make those changes too quickly, and it becomes a convincing challenge, like how to convince them. Sometimes I'm able to convince them, sometimes uh, you know uh, they do not get convinced, and we have to figure out some other way. But I think when I was growing up through this, I faced those challenges, especially during product development stages, and it really impacts, and it hurts me when I know that if I make this change right now, this is where I'm going to go. If I don't make that change right now, this is where I'm going to land. And if I do not have that authority at that time, it bit of hurts. Yeah.
So on that though, what have you learned from that pain? So if it hurts you, that's painful. Yeah. So what have you learned from those experiences?
The biggest thing that I've learned from that is ability to convince people. Okay. Why, if I want to make that change, why that change is important? How is it going to create win-win scenarios for everybody? And that is the biggest learning that I have. You need to convince people, and you need to show them win-win scenarios. Sometimes win-win-win scenarios, sometimes win-win-win-win scenarios. Like, depend on multiple stakeholders that you have.
You just said win-win scenarios, but if you're challenging the status quo, doesn't someone lose if you win?
Maybe in a short time span, somebody will lose. Okay, but when you think about longer future, you need to be clear, and I need to be clear that this is how it's going to be pan out, and then come up with the data points and proof points that will show it that is going to happen. Show the probabilities, convince them with your confidence, conviction. That's the way out. That's the way out that I have figured out.
It's fascinating that you describe it as the way out, actually. It's also fascinating that what you said, the pain taught you how to convince people. What an astute response. So you've learned how to convince people. You've extended your time span of problems. What attracted you to be a co-founder at your current venture? What status quo are you running at with your data sword now?
Currently, we are doing a lot of things, and I'm excited equally about all those things. Majorly, the overall admissions process for students. That's the first thing. Okay, smoothing out that admissions process for students, getting them to their dream destination, and from the university side, automating that process, getting them more students, and again smoothing that whole process of getting the admissions done, right? And I think we are building an intersection of that, and I'm fairly excited about it. And with the advent of large language model, I believe we are going to do it fairly faster. Okay, I had that dream, of a virtual agent helping the student through the whole life cycle of the admission journey. And with these large language models, it feels like it's going to be a reality fairly soon. And I'm working on that. That means students are going to benefit not just in that process. Take one example of a transfer student. Okay, when the student transfer happens, students lose out on a lot of credits. 44%. That's the stats that we have seen, and that's a huge loss of their time as well as the amount that they invest in that previous education university institute. So with the help of AI and technology, we'll be able to reduce that gap. Okay, and that's a big achievement already for me. So that's one thing. Secondly, getting them to their dream destination, the dream jobs. So identifying based on the current skills of the student, what kind of jobs are applicable, but asking them what is their dream job, and then showing the skills that are required for that dream job, showing the gap in the skills, and then showing programs across universities which will help them to bridge that gap for those skills, and then showing them the pathway towards their dream job. So that is what my next goal is, and I'm fairly excited about it.
And that's quite noble. What what do you think is the status quo that you're challenging with this whole approach? Like, what's the root thing that's blocking people to be successful right now? And what it is what's your dragon?
Yeah, so currently it's all dispersed. If you
Mm.
think about current job platforms, they provide all the job listings, okay, but they do not provide you information about what is missing in your profile, okay, what skills are missing and how you can get those skills. There are skills provider, but they are not connecting with jobs. They are not connecting with students' profiles. They are not getting the resumes and helping, right? And then there are job providers. They're just going out in the listing platforms and listing, and then they're hoping that students will get there. So all of them are kind of working without helping each other independently. And I'm trying to get all these things together in one platform. So I think that's
effectively the gates are owned by too many toll gate owners.
yes.
And they all benefit from slowing people down. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that what you just said? Sorry.
Potentially they are benefiting from slowing things down and they're charging in between. I think
So
there is one
do you want
platform.
to remove the tolls? Is that the status quo? There's no need for the toll?
Yes, yes, that's beautifully put.
Right.
John,
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting. So so now we've sort of gone through your journey. We've ended up at iSchool. But what do you think your unfair advantage is now as a co-founder and the CTO of iSchool?
Unfair advantage. I think there are two straightforward unfair advantages. One is my knowledge of technology. Second, our team, who is really good at building relationships, getting key people onboarded, and get backup funding wherever required, and yeah, moving forward. I think those two are the major unfair advantages that we already have.
I've got one for you. I was going to sorry. I think you, as in personally you, have some very, very important unfair advantages. One is persistence. And I was going to suggest that the word, when I heard about your father's story and also your mother's story, thinking about it, is persistence. Your father taught you about persisting, keeping going. Even when you don't get what you want, you keep going.
Right.
All right. And that was a trait that you showed in your MBA. You kept on going. You kept on looking. You kept on searching. You kept on hunting. All right. And this is a trait I relate to as an entrepreneur. Is just keeping on going. Even if the evidence is saying that you're doing this wrong, just keep on going. All right. Until you're proven right. And I just think your persistence is an unfair advantage. You'll keep in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. That is much deeper aspect than I was thinking about, and thanks for bringing that to my notice. And yeah, I believe, and I completely agree with you on that point. So
Yeah,
that's something.
And to also, again, I was thinking aloud here, there's the persistence, but the persistence in pursuit of a noble goal. Okay, so it's not just any old persistence, it's persistence to try and get a higher goal. All right. Yeah. And that, again, we're talking about something that makes you, not the company, not the team, you have an unfair advantage.
Right.
That will express itself through the team and through the company. But your persistence to a higher goal, to get rid of the toll booths, to go back to that metaphor, to challenge the status quo, that's really interesting because there's a dynamic there, like a tension between where you want to go and where you are today, and all the bullshit that happens between where you are today and the future. That's the day-to-day experience of being a founder.
Yeah, beautifully put that, Dan. I appreciate that putting through. I will now nurture that persistence more.
Do you think Dan's right, AT?
Absolutely. I think that's the key, or that's the connecting aspect across my whole life so far. Persistence.
Mhm. Do you think your business partners and people around you understand that that's your unfair advantage?
Probably subconsciously they know it.
Mm. What do you think will happen
That,
if you tell them consciously?
yeah, I think they will start trusting me more,
Mm.
and they will start having more confidence, not just in me, but in the whole team.
Have you, you're obviously a very motivated guy. I've seen your work. It's extremely capable. You know what you're doing. Do you think have the people around you heard that story that you've just taken us through about how you become this character?
No, I don't think so. They know it.
Why haven't you told them?
I felt that it has been a kind of a personal aspect for me.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I understand.
Maybe the
That
one thing
fits.
I would say is that if you tell more people that story and they know your unfair advantage, it might help you convince people that there's a win-win way more often.
Mm,
And I'll give you that challenge, if you would. I think if you tell people what your unfair advantage is and you tell people that story about how you got it, I think
mm,
you'll have to do a lot less convincing, or the convincing will become a lot easier.
agreed.
Yeah, I think you also, just to reflect back to you, you told the story when you were doing your MBA of traveling on the bus, studying on the bus, working.
Mm,
That's persistence too.
yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, persistence is a very honorable attribute of a
Mm,
character. We admire people who stick with it.
yeah.
Yeah, who keep going. It's like a hero's journey thing.
Mm,
We admire people like that because they're honorable. They do what they say they're going to do. You can trust them. All right. And in the 21st century, everybody is struggling to trust people.
mm,
So who do you trust? Well, you trust people who show up and ship their work and do what they say they're going to do.
Mm.
And
who
that's
will?
you,
Yeah.
the persistence. All right.
Yeah.
You are it. You just need to, if you communicated it, to Tom's point, I think it'd be very interesting to see what starts to happen for you around you. Because
Mm,
because people want those kinds of leaders, I think, nowadays.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I at this point I'll thank both of you for identifying that trait for me and then communicating it out. I think
Mm.
I missed out on communicating that out, but I'll keep a note of that now, and I appreciate you helping me in
I would say, AT, that the more you communicate it, the faster you'll get the BMX bikes.
that. Mm,
And I mean that literally and
yeah. Agreed.
theoretically. One, I think, I think more people cheering you on would keep the persistence going. And eventually it'll hit a point where you can do your best work. So, look, consider yourself unmasked. Let's see what happens with your unfair advantage. And thanks for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure to have you, and it's been extremely reflective to hear your story. And I think some of the ways that you think about things are extremely well thought out and will be valuable to a whole number of people. So thank you.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
agree. I think it's inspiring. It's an inspiring story. I think that there's a phrase, Naval Ravikant says that you should only play long-term games with long-term people. And I think somebody who persists is a long-term person, playing a long-term game. And that's, for me, the kind of person I want to hang around with. And I think it's a good thing.
That's wonderful. I appreciate honestly uh, talking to you and you guiding me about that last but very important part of persistence and communication about that and how that can help me. I'm very positive about it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. And your questions were very, very thought provoking, and it allowed me to uncover some of the aspects that were hidden inside me. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, AP.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.